Top Gun now dominates the box office, and to an extent some headlines as well, and for good cause. A lot of people are happy, but we should remember that Top Gun is not just a movie. There was once upon a time an actual Top Gun. Of course, Top Gun was not the official name. The official name was some typically bureaucratic, military sort of a sentence that doesn't make full, complete sense. It was something to the effect of the US Navy or naval warfighter, jet fighting pilot, aviator academy or school. The US Navy warfighting tactic school, I think, something to that effect, which is pretty appropriate. This program started life under very, very unfortunate circumstances when the abysmal and totally unacceptable ratio of kill to loss finally lit the red light or raised the red flag for someone, and the chief commissioner of in charge of the Navy in the Vietnam War commissioned someone to investigate the reason of this very poor kill to loss ratio, something like 2.5. So in other words, that meant that any pilot who went out on a sortie had a one chance in 2.5 not to come back. In other words, in any one-on-one engagement, out of 2.5 engagements, one-on-one engagements, one of our boys didn't come back, which is a very, very high price to pay in blood, and of course in money and loss of equipment and administration as well. In fact, this really started in the Korean War. However, unfortunately, in the Korean War, where the kill to loss ratio sank to almost these levels, it was a little bit better, but it was still completely abysmal and unacceptable. Unfortunately, nobody started an investigation at that time. That would have saved a lot of lives and a lot of pain. But no one until sometime in the mid-60s woke up, and even after the conclusion of this investigation showed that the US military was simply not prepared to engage this enemy. Not surprisingly, the US came into the conflict with arrogance and overconfidence in technical superiority, better equipment, and better technology. So again, the US put all of its eggs in one basket, which was the basket that, hey, we're the big guys, we have more money and better technology and better fighter jets. And that backfired big time. After the conclusion of the investigation, it was decided to establish a special academy that would specialize in one-on-one fighter jet tactics, dogfights, and many other disciplines surrounding that. So it wasn't just the dogfight, but it was they came up with an entire doctrine, an entire philosophy that would prepare the pilots. A lot of the points were being familiar with the enemy's equipment, being familiar with the equipment, with the enemy's tactic, find out our weak points and improve them, find out the enemy's weak points. So there was a very thorough analysis, and all of this was worked into a curriculum, and the curriculum was, from its inception, established in a way that it should always be in flux. So it was not a rigid set in stone curriculum, but it was based on on getting and giving feedback in a loop. It wasn't, I think at the time they didn't call it an OODA loop, but it was a very similar concept. Be it as it may, they started, or actually they wanted to start it, the academy, and very, very sadly, very, very unfortunately, the biggest enemy that they faced was not the actual physical enemy, but the military itself, the bureaucracy, the thick-headedness, the stubbornness of the higher brass. They didn't want to give any funding to the school. They didn't believe in the school. That they treated them like shit. But finally, they got the green light to go ahead. Legend has it that they didn't even get a classroom. They had to set up shop in, I think, either the back of a trailer that was parked somewhere, or sort of a shipping container. One of these kind of crazy things. And they started the academy, and like I said, that they came up with a genius, very, very thorough curriculum, and they prepared each pilot, and each pilot had sort of a almost personalized program. They focused a lot on teaching methods, so the whole pedagogical philosophy was developed with how to best influence, how to best teach the students. They studied to what kind of methods do the students respond best, and under which circumstances. They sort of built a profile of what kind of people their students were, and what were the most effective teaching methods. And the curriculum was also not a cookie cutter style. So there was, of course, a curriculum that everybody had to learn and had to understand. But besides for that, everyone got one or two specialties. And almost each one of the graduates had to specialize in a certain weapon system, either ours or the enemy's, understanding the enemy's weaponry and weapon systems, or ours, and really to rise to an expert level. And that, by the way, that's a doctrine that wasn't entirely new. They got it from World War II vets who came back from World War II, and for some reason this idea was abandoned after World War II, which is kind of curious, well, interesting why they abandoned this. And so they had to fight more than anything else the internal bureaucracy of the military. But then when the graduates, and one more thing is that the graduates, I don't know if this was by design and that each graduate was required to also become an instructor, but in practice it definitely happened that way. So almost every graduate of the academy became an instructor. So they sort of spread the gospel. They spread the word of this doctrine, and they taught others. And they, of course, they took people from other pilots from other branches of the military. So now they had people who came to them from the Air Force and the Marine Corps and the Army, maybe even. And so now this started to bring more awareness, obviously, to the program and its efficiency. The best thing that happened is that the kill to loss ratio started to improve exponentially. Towards the end of the war, they got to a 12.5 kill to loss ratio, which was quintuple, right? 2.5 times 5 is, yeah. So they improved the kill to loss ratio 5 times. So this didn't go unnoticed. I think the first one to wake up was the Air Force, who sent a bunch of students there to become instructors, and then they instituted their own academy. If I'm not mistaken, might have been the Marine Corps, but I think it was the Air Force. Oh, and two very, very important things that happened. They're both incredible stories. Really the stuff of storybooks. Actually, there are story books about it. This academy got two different MiGs, an Iraqi MiG and a Syrian MiG. They got them both from Israel. The first one was a Christian officer who defected in middle of a maneuver, a pretty important military not a actual operation, but a maneuver, a training, a drill, but still they practiced formation and then flying low and things of that nature. And apparently he got in touch with the Israeli Secret Service, and they smuggled his family out of Iraq, because that's what they that's what the Iraqis would have done to him, is immediately go and imprison and torture his family to get him back. So that in and of itself was an ingenious operation. And in the end, the Israelis give the MiG to the States. Not really sure about the circumstances. Maybe that had something to do with the USS Liberty, the story there. So, and then not long afterwards, like within 2 or 3 years, a Syrian pilot mistook or missed his target and landed on a small airstrip in Israel instead of his military landing spot, which is also kind of one of these stories that you almost don't want to believe. Maybe not, who knows, but I just don't know what conspiracy theories there might be behind this. But anyway, these are the official stories. So there was the Iraqi Christian pilot who defected to Israel with his family, and then the Syrian guy who mistakenly landed in Israel, and Israel gave the US military both MiGs. How they landed up in Top Gun, in the Naval Flight Academy, I don't remember, unfortunately. I read a very extensive article on this. I don't remember how exactly it landed there. I don't believe that the Israelis gave it directly to this academy. Wouldn't make sense. The academy itself was classified, so they probably didn't know about it. It doesn't make sense that they would have even given it to a specific branch of the military. But be it as it may, they both ended up with this academy, and this academy then got a very, very good idea of the differences between the MiG and the planes that they were using at the time. In fact, even the academy couldn't use exactly the same planes that they were using in the theater in Vietnam, because they didn't have any funding. So they got some crappy planes, I forgot already, Northrop Grumman or whatever, planes that were already kind of being dated at the time. But of course those two MiGs helped a lot, and they understood a lot of differences between the MiGs and what the US military was using, and they studied in depth the advantages and disadvantages of both systems and how to gain an advantage. They finally understood the reach and the efficiency of the weaponry, so they knew how to get in range of the enemy combatants, of the enemy jets, while being out of the enemy's reach of the weapons. So, and by the way, I didn't watch the movies. I didn't watch, for sure, the new Top Gun, and the one that came out in the late or mid 80s. I don't remember. I know that it was somebody did bring it on a VHS to the high school, but I don't know if I was present. But I'm pretty sure that even if the academy is mentioned, they don't go into this depth. It's probably, the movies are probably not being told from a historic perspective and don't have such of a documentary flair to it. But anyway, maybe I just wasted 15-16 minutes of your time. If so, I apologize. And happy July 4th, by the way. Enjoy your freedoms while you can, and enjoy responsibly. So that's in a nutshell the story of the real Top Gun. I also just recently found out that this became declassified just relatively recently, like a decade ago or so, 2013 maybe. So how did the first Top Gun movie know about it? I don't know. But again, like I said, it was probably not told from a historic or some sort of documentary kind of feel to it. So it was probably just mentioned in passing. But anyway, the true story of Top Gun, of the U.S. Naval Academy, is really a truth of a story of courage and determination versus the establishment, versus the absolutely inane and insane Kafkaesque establishment that just did everything to put sticks in their wheels. Of course, until the point that they had no other choice but to believe them. And this was just a handful of people. It was like 10-15 people who started the program. The instructors, the administrators, all the people who conceived and implemented the programs. Of course, later on in time it grew, but the nucleus, the initial group was just something like that. 10 to 15 people who succeeded in the face of adversity and went against the powers that be, or the powers that shouldn't be, I should rather say, and succeeded. And they implemented their ideas, and their success showed, and was finally their ideas were implemented and accepted, and their academy became a big and respected academy. So may that give us hope also to fight the powers that shouldn't be and the establishment, and hopefully there's still some sort of hope against hope. So this is a fascinating story, very interesting, and I hope you look it up and invest some time in reading up on it. And so until the next time, have a good sin.